At 04:31 a.m., a Kalibr cruise missile launched from a Russian submarine slammed into the hull of the Ukrainian F-27, a liquefied natural gas carrier, a $4 billion symbol of Ukraine's strategic energy corridor in the Black Sea. This was not just a strike, it was a challenge, a direct blow to the economic backbone, the pride and the resilience of a nation facing all-out war. Russia believed it could cripple Ukraine with a preemptive strike, destroying its maritime lifeline and sending a message of deterrence through firepower. But what Russia didn't anticipate was that this blow inadvertently triggered a pre-programmed, cold, precise, and unrelenting response mechanism. A lesson written in rocket artillery, kamikaze drones, and explosions that pierce through steel bunkers. This is the untold story of how Ukraine turned an attack on its LNG ship into a fury that obliterated the Novorossiysk naval base in just 30 minutes. Subscribe and follow as we retrace every second of the counterattack. What happened when Russia's missile struck? Let's find out. At 03:05 a.m., the Black Sea lay calm as a mirror shrouded in mist, with a gentle breeze brushing against the massive hull of the Ukrainian F-27, the pride of Ukraine's energy sector. The ship carried over 600,000 cubic meters of LNG worth nearly $4 billion, with 31 crew members on a journey from Mykolaiv port to an offshore transfer point south of Odessa. High above, a Bayraktar TB2 reconnaissance drone silently circled, scanning the water, while an island-class patrol boat escorted alongside. All were programmed to move within a safe corridor once monitored by NATO. But that night, nothing was truly safe. At 03:24, the escort ship's radar detected an anomaly. Two bright specks moving at over 800 kilometers to 11 kilometers to the southeast. The officer on watch thought it was weather interference, but within seconds, the automated trajectory warning system flashed red. It was Kalibr cruise missiles, launched from a Russian Kilo-class submarine lurking beneath the waters near Sevastopol. No warning, no radio signal, just two cold streaks of light racing toward a billion-dollar target. Deploy flares, the captain shouted. Two anti-missile decoys lit up, creating a false heat signature off the starboard side, while the Bayraktar drone relayed coordinates to the command center. One Kalibr was diverted by the island-class ship's short-range defense system, exploding mid-air, sending a shockwave that shook the sea. But the second missile breached all defenses. At nearly Mach 2, it slammed into the technical section mid-ship, piercing 2 layers of steel and detonating the gas transport pipeline system. The impact turned the ship into a giant bomb. Flames erupted from the cargo hold like a volcano, with a column of smoke and burning gas rising hundreds of meters. The blast shattered all bridge windows, knocking down crew members on night watch. 9 were injured, 3 with severe burns, and 2 went missing below deck. The crew raced against time, shutting main valves and cutting power to prevent a chain reaction. On deck, temperatures reached 800 Celsius, paint melted, and steel cracked with a groaning roar like a dying beast. The ship tilted 20 degrees to port, with oil and gas leaking into the sea, creating a terrifying phosphorescent sheen in the dark. The escort ship tried to approach, spraying water to cool the stern, but the flames from the gas pipes remained uncontrollable. In the air, the Bayraktar drone captured the entire scene, a ship burning red-hot in the pitch-black ocean, like an open wound in the heart of the Black Sea. At 03:46, a second explosion rocked the ship. One of the auxiliary tanks detonated, snapping the stern clean off. The shockwave reached Ochakiv port, registering on local seismic sensors like a major industrial explosion. By 05:10, when the flames finally subsided, the ship was a warped skeleton with molten steel dripping red. 15 surviving crew members were rescued onto the escort ship, dazed. The mission commander sat slumped, still clutching a singed navigation chart. Total losses exceeded $4 billion, cargo, infrastructure, and human lives. For Russia, this was a precise naval victory, a strike aimed at Ukraine's energy lifeline. But none of them realized that as the ship's wreckage still smoldered, across the Dnipro River, a retaliation network was already activating, and the Black Sea was about to witness a true nightmare. At 04 a.m., as the fire on the wreckage of Ukraine F-27 still burned like a deep, unstaunched wound on the Black Sea, the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's southern operations, Lieutenant General Dmytro Vashchenko, issued a classified order codenamed Fire God 41. No announcement, no warning shot. It was an immediate long-range firepower response, activated when strategic energy infrastructure faced destruction. The entire southern front shifted instantly from defense to offense. The counterattack didn't target the unit that fired the Kalibr missile, but aimed directly at Russia's naval logistics hub in Novorossiysk, identified as the Coordination, Refueling, and Logistics Center for Offensive Naval Operations along the Black Sea coast. 6 minutes later, Electronic reconnaissance units and tactical drones began monitoring the enemy's coastline. Barktar TB2s scanned from 4,500 meters, while Furia and Spectator M drones flew low near the water to avoid electronic interference. Data streamed to the command center in Voznesensk via high-speed encrypted channels. At 0411, the first signals came clear. Continuous phased array radar activity, mid and high-frequency positioning signals, and massive heat signatures from the docks. Infrared imagery confirmed at least 3 Russian naval ships at Pier B, including one Admiral Grigorovich-class frigate and 2 Bayan M-class missile corvettes. Behind them was the base's central fuel depot, supplying naval fuel for ships preparing to deploy to the Sea of Azov. All were operational. Nearby, at Storage Area 38A, electromagnetic signals from a fixed radar coordination station were identified as the main control point for Novorossiysk's entire defense line. At 0422, the order to deploy firepower was confirmed. The Harem-2 operational tactical missile system, Ukraine's most precise long-range weapon, was secretly moved overnight from Poltava and was now ready to fire near Kryvyi Rih. Each launcher carried 2 missiles with 500 kilojoule penetrating warheads and a 500-kilometer range. First target, the fixed radar coordination station at Storage Area 38A. Next, the Pier cluster and fuel depot. Firing was set in staggered waves, synchronized with cruise missile units and kamikaze drones. Simultaneously, from field launch stations along the Inhul River, 2 companies of R-360 Neptune cruise missiles from the Southern Coast Defense Brigade began programming targets. Unlike their usual anti-ship role, these Neptunes were loaded with coordinates to strike coastal logistics infrastructure, specifically underground fuel tanks, weapon storage, and dock control transmission stations. Each Neptune had a range over 280 kilometers, flew at 5 to 10 meters to evade radar, and carried a 150 kg fragmentation warhead, ideal for soft and semi-fortified targets like docks. From 0430 to 0440, the first Neptune salvo launched. 6 missiles fired 20 seconds apart, following a path hugging the coastline's curve to mask radar signatures. Reconnaissance drones maintained target lock, marking impact points in real time and updating data for the cruise missile control team. At the same time, a swarm of Lilika 100 drones acted as decoys, mimicking flight signals to confuse Russia's semi-automated air defense systems. At 0445, at a field airfield near Kherson, 3 Ram-2 kamikaze drones were fueled, programmed with flight paths, and launched in electronic silence mode. With a 40-kilometer range, 70 to 90 km/h cruising speed, and tandem armor-piercing warheads, the Ram-2s were set to strike lightly protected targets like command posts, communication stations, or tactical command clusters. Per the plan, they would reach Novorossiysk minutes after the initial missile strikes, just as the enemy reeled from the first impacts. Less than an hour after Ukrainian Tu-27 was hit, a precise combat network was fully established, comprising reconnaissance drones, mid-range cruise missiles, operational ballistic missiles, and kamikaze drones. Every parameter, target, and timing was calculated to the second. No warning, no alert, no diplomacy, only speed, discipline, and cold resolve, forged in blood and fire. And as all launch platforms lit up ready, Ukraine's commanders knew this was no longer a response. This was punishment. At 0512 a.m., as dawn's first red glow began to pierce the night, a flash streaked across the sky at Novorossiysk main naval pier, slamming into the bow of the Admiral Grigorovich-class command ship. It was one of 3 Ram-2 kamikaze drones that had slipped past coastal air defenses by flying low over the water. In an instant, its tandem armor-piercing warhead buried into the command bridge and detonated, shredding the upper deck structure and turning the bridge into a smoldering ruin. The fire spread quickly to fuel reserves in the hull. A second, larger explosion rocked the ship, tilting it to port, while its radio systems went completely silent. All fire coordination signals from the ship, the floating command center of the battle group, vanished from the map. Russia's operational zone was instantly paralyzed. 3 minutes later, at 0515, 4 Harem-2 ballistic missiles launched from Kryvyi Rih roared in from the northwest. With supersonic speed and warheads over half a ton, each slammed into the central command bunker behind Storage Area 38A. Each impact unleashed a thunderous blast, blowing off multi-ton steel hatches and ripping through reinforced concrete over a meter thick. The main bunker was penetrated from the roof, its first-floor concrete slab collapsing into the basement shelter, crushing everything inside. On the surface, a dust column shot over 100 meters high, with a shockwave shattering windows within a 500-meter radius. From that moment, mid- and senior-level officers with tactical decision-making authority stopped signaling back. Simultaneously, 6 R-360 Neptune cruise missiles approached the coastal target zone, flying ultra-low, weaving through hilly terrain and civilian structures to evade remaining radar. The first 3 targeted the pier housing a Kilo-class submarine under refueling. One missile pierced the stern and exploded below the waterline, sending a smoke trail dozens of meters long and tilting the submarine heavily to one side, its engines falling silent. The next 2 hit the Eastern Artillery Depot, triggering a chain explosion of 152mm shells awaiting transport. Hundreds of rounds detonated like hellish fireworks, collapsing the roof and raining deadly steel fragments across the storage yard. The final missile struck the logistics vehicle lot, where dozens of armored vehicles were lined up for refueling and rearming. The blast turned the area into a sea of fire, with auxiliary fuel tanks launching like projectiles, landing hundreds of meters away. Lelika 100 drones continued circling, streaming real-time imagery to Ukraine's artillery command in Zaporizhia. The data was quickly analyzed and used to adjust fire for Vilka M rocket artillery, a high-precision guided system with powerful fragmentation warheads. At 0530, a second Vilka M salvo fired from 3 launch points, streaking skyward like steel arrows of wrath. Each carried over 300 steel-piercing fragments, programmed to detonate at low altitude for maximum soft target damage and infrastructure destruction. The target, the base's central fuel depot, holding over 700,000 liters of aviation and naval diesel, less than 250 meters from Pier B. When the third rocket hit the tank's roof, the ground shook like a minor earthquake. Half a second later, a massive fireball erupted, soaring nearly 400 meters. Its blinding light forcing reconnaissance drones to reduce sensor aperture to avoid lens damage. The blast wave obliterated nearby warehouse roofs, triggering dozens of secondary explosions from reserve fuel cans and auxiliary tanks. Russian rescue sirens wailed in vain. No one could direct forces, no one knew where to send fire trucks, and no area was safe enough for medevac helicopters to land. The base's internal communication channels fell silent, as if severed by a surgical blade. Emergency lights in the storage areas no longer flashed red because the central power system had burned out. Surviving soldiers stumbled from the rubble, unarmed, eyes filled with panic. A naval base fortified over 8 years, a strategic symbol post-Crimea, a cornerstone for the Eastern Black Sea Fleet, crumbled like sand against a flood. Smoke and fire obscured the southern Novorossiysk sky, with distress signals echoing like hopeless screams from hell. As the sun rose over the eastern horizon, pale golden light pierced the thick black smoke still rising from Novorossiysk ruins. What remained was not a naval base but a charred, rusted battlefield, unrecognizable, no piers, no warehouses, no bunker entrances. Preliminary estimates from electronic reconnaissance and satellite imagery put Russian losses at over $3 billion in under half an hour. 270 personnel were killed or injured, many trapped in collapsed buildings, unreachable due to unbearable on-site temperatures. Among them were at least 11 battalion and brigade-level officers responsible for command, communications, and operations along the Krasnodar coast. 3 warships, including 1 Admiral Grigorovich-class frigate and 2 BM-class corvettes, were completely destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 1 Kilo-class submarine tilted and burned in its engine room, its status unclear but likely requiring months to remobilize if repairable at all. 2 major fuel depots were incinerated. All aviation and naval diesel reserves at Novorossiysk, critical for operations in the Sea of Azov, and eastern Crimea were obliterated in a few precise strikes. The main 96 L6E long-range radar and the entire underground command center were irreparably collapsed. Connections to coastal S-300, S-400 air defense systems were severed by 0519 and remained offline by 07. In effect, Russia's naval logistics and command capabilities in the eastern Black Sea were completely paralyzed for at least 6 months, barring a miracle, and miracles don't favor the overconfident. Meanwhile, Ukraine suffered no significant losses. All Neptune and Hrim-2 missile units safely withdrew to reserve positions. Bayraktar Lelika 100 and Spectator M drones completed their missions and returned safely, except for 1 Ram-2 shot down during withdrawal. But it had already hit the Grigorovich command ship's tower, fulfilling its primary task, a small trade-off, given the operation's outcome. When the first Kalibr missile launched from a Russian submarine and struck Ukraine F-27, Moscow might have thought it was a mere warning, an economic slap to deter Kiev and block energy exports. They were wrong, terribly wrong. That strike didn't break Ukraine, it only tightened their grip on the launch lever, activating a pre-programmed, second-by-second, ruthlessly precise counterstrike. In under 2 hours from the moment the ship caught fire to the final fireball rising over Novorossiysk, an entire Russian naval base was crushed, not by overwhelming force but by a distributed, agile, real-time, data-driven attack system. This wasn't just retaliation. It was a statement in smoke, fire, and shattered concrete that Ukraine had entered a new era, no longer passively defending, no longer counting every round, no longer waiting for aid. They struck faster, harder, and more precisely than any enemy could predict. Every drone, rocket, and missile fired wasn't just a response, it was a preemption against future attempts. From this moment, any missile launched from Russia, be it from a ship, land, or air, would face an instant feedback system built on data, speed, and resolve. Because modern warfare isn't about who has more ships or guns, it's about who strikes first, more accurately, and with unrelenting finality. Ukraine proved this not with theory but with explosions that shattered steel bunkers, drones crashing into command ships, and a military map redrawn in 30 minutes. The Black Sea will no longer be calm, and with every incoming strike, Ukraine won't just respond, it will end it. In the smoke and fire, some messages ring louder than declarations. And today, that message was written in molten steel. If you see Ukraine's 30-minute feat as a stark reminder to every aggressor, hit subscribe to catch every battle that reshapes the battlefield's balance. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video, where the fires still burn, and untold stories await their spark.